What's up, everyone? It's Invisible Walls, episode 117 here on GameTrailers.com. We're all about to head out to Comic-Con to cover it for you guys. We're actually recording this show a day earlier than usual. Definitely want to make sure we had a show for you guys. It's also a very special episode this week on Invisible Walls. This week, we're going overboard and answering all of your questions you ever asked about games.
Oh, okay. I was surprised. Usually when it's a special episode, someone gets touched by an uncle or something like that.
No, this whole, well, I wouldn't say the whole episode, but a good part of the episode is going to be dominated by On the Hook. We asked you or Off the Hook. We asked you guys for questions last week. You delivered with some really good ones, so we figured we'd oblige and answer as many as we can on the show. Here to do that, as you've already heard, is Ryan Stevens.
Who is an uncle, but has never been touched by one.
Are you sure?
I hope not. Maybe I blocked it out.
That's inappropriate shit right there.
This podcast is rated AO.
That's Invisible Walls. Miguel Lopez.
Hello. Hello.
Daniel Bloodworth's on the show today.
Hey, what's up?
And Brooks Huber.
That's right. How you guys doing?
I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable right there, but that's okay.
Zeus! Your son has returned.
All right, it's been a long time coming. We were not receiving the MPD reports for the last couple months, and when we would receive them, they would come in late, so we didn't really feel like it was proper to put them on the show. We got the MPD report this time, on time, so we are going to talk about the sales of the biggest video games in the land. And I guess Red Dead Redemption takes the top slot for software sales on the 360, almost 600,000 units across the month. I think that game is definitely showing some legs, especially when you look at the PS3 version in third place at 380K.
Yeah,
so that's almost
2 million now, right?
Yeah, that's almost 1 million units in, well after a month after it was released. That's some serious legs right there.
But why did people have to get laid off?
Yeah. Well, I think the better question is, it's funny, how many glitch videos have we seen on the internet from this game? More than any game I can remember in recent memory. And I wonder if the glitch videos are drawing people to the game, ultimately, because they're like, oh my god.
Marketing right there.
Well, they're cool glitches, actually.
Yeah.
They're not just like, oh, the game breaks. It's like, oh my god, there goes some woman acting like a chicken. Like, they're actually
You almost want them to be real, so you can find
Right.
them for yourself and not just be glitches, but hey,
it seems that they're also rare enough where when you do see one, it's kind of like a little Easter egg for you.
Well, it depends on who you talk to. You talk to Jeremy Hoffman, he says those things popped up like every 5 minutes. Other people I talked to said they played all the way through the game and never saw it.
That's also like your friend who claims to have seen like 5 UFOs in as many years, Like, come on, man.
That's true.
I think we can trust Hoffman. He's a pretty straight shooter. So, but you're right. It does seem like it's all over the place. Some people say they had lots of problems with it. Other people say that they didn't have any problems with it. One thing I will say is Rockstar's not having any problems with the sales of this game. I mean, it's doing extremely well. Second place, Super Mario Galaxy 2. Huzzah!
Yeah, I'm glad it's broke 1 million now.
Yeah.
So.
It took the first one a little longer, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, the first one, I think that Nintendo would probably even agree, didn't quite sell up to expectations. It didn't sell as well as I thought it would, at least, especially considering the quality of the game.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd that New Super Mario Bros. Wii sold so much better.
Yeah, it's still on the chart there.
Yeah, there it is at number 4. And actually, it didn't sell that many less than Super Mario Galaxy 2.
I'm talking about legs.
Yeah, talk about legs. Those are some serious legs. And then there's Just Dance.
Also legs.
Yeah.
That you dance on.
Wow. I mean, truly word of mouth is on the internet. I mean, marketing on Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah, I still have to wonder, why did this one take off and, Boogie didn't? Or the other, 100. Well, maybe there's not 100, but there's a couple other
lot.
ones like it. Why did this one take
I don't know
off?
what it is. Maybe it's the music selection.
Yeah.
The cover.
Yeah, actually, the only new ones are Toy Story and Harry Potter.
Yeah, and Toy Story 3 is not the console version. It's the Nintendo DS version.
Yeah, it's something. Was there a coupon given out at the movie or what?
I don't know, but they did not give us numbers for anything outside the top 5. It's amazing how MPD keeps sort of choking the numbers more and more to give us less and less to work with here. I guess they want us to pay for them. You would think just us doing a segment about MPD would be enough free promotion, but so we don't have the numbers for the top 5, although I think it's safe to say that UFC 2010 Undisputed is not doing as well as the first game. Maybe a lot of people felt like once they got the first game, that was good enough. And
yeah, I heard some talk about the importance of roster changes and how with UFC it just doesn't make as much of a difference year on year.
Yeah, I mean they don't change all that much. I mean Kimbo is out of the UFC now. That's kind of a big deal, but
Yeah, but I think they'll probably fix it in 2011 by letting you kill someone, and then the rosters will really change. I mean, it's bound to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the
In
other
real
problem
life.
with the UFC is it's not like a wrestling game where you need very specific tools to create a character. It's like you have a general character creation tool that gives you, 100 or 200 hairstyles. You can pretty much create most of the guys in the UFC with that. So
I think it's a good thing though, like that. Rather than relying on arbitrary roster changes, this allows the game to succeed on the merit of what it brings new every year.
it's true.
Yeah.
But it looks like the people voted with their money, and they're like, screw that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with core sports games, and UFC is probably on the periphery of that. But it's when you have a baseball game, it's a baseball game. You can add stuff every year, but you're still, unless you like really build it from the ground up, it's kind of always
Right.
the same game.
I mean, all things considered, THQ spent a year building this game, and there you see the 360 version at 8 and the PS3 version at 10. I think another thing we're seeing here is seeing the 360 and PS3 versions a lot more closely ranked in the top 10 than we have for a lot of games in the past. So it looks like that gap is continuing to close between those two platforms as far as third-party sales. Mm-hmm. But and then Lego Harry Potter, 9th place. Everybody here seems to love the game. I haven't played it. Have any of you guys played it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
enough.
did. Me and Brooks played.
9th place on the Wii as well. So
Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of what you expect.
A lot of people around the office seem to love it. They say it's the best Lego whatever game so
Oh,
far.
really?
And
talking about Jeremy Hoffman again.
well, he's one of them. But no, there's been a lot of people here playing that game. for-
It certainly did update the formula, and the setting. You're basically in Hogwarts and the surrounding areas. Like that lends itself well to, it being a place that you can explore and not just a series of levels. So yeah, it was well done in that sense.
So here's the stuff all the kids want to really hear, and that's the console sales.
I'm surprised by 360.
Yeah, it won another month.
I would have thought it was way higher though. I would have
Well,
thought.
the
I mean,
DS is still on top, but yeah, over the Wii.
no, I mean, I would have thought it would have sold more. When people were
Because
saying it was
of the new
the Slim,
unit.
people were saying it was selling out. Because do you remember when the DSi came out? It the DS sales doubled that month, and yeah, it had some more functionality and stuff. But it's kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, that's kind of double for the 360, right? I mean, it's usually around 300K or something like that. And
it's
now
not an
at-
actual double though.
No,
I mean,
it's not.
I was expecting it. I was expecting it to beat the DS.
Well, the other part, too, is
Or
how
at
many
least get
machines
closer.
did they actually have ready? I mean, that was their first shipment, so...
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow it into this month, July. I'm just saying I was surprised it wasn't a little bit higher.
Yeah, I mean, the PS3 is right behind there at 304K, so it's not like it got its ass kicked, even though Microsoft rolled out a brand new machine. So I'm wondering if it is the fact that they couldn't produce enough, or if people just don't feel like the new 360 is a worthy proposition.
Yeah, well, it was sold out where I went.
Yeah?
I wasn't going to pick one up. I just was curious to ask, and it was at Best Buy, and he said, oh, those sold out right away.
So maybe it was a stocking issue.
Could have been.
Well, you got to figure when they launch machines, they usually have around 1 million units or something like that to launch with. So, and that's with the very first launch of a system. So, I don't know if we should project gloom and doom yet on the 360 Slim. I think that's still a pretty respectable number. Microsoft did win another month. That's the second time in I don't know how many months. In a lot of months, but they did take another month, which is something to think about. The Wii still at 422K, not far behind the 360, and I wonder if the Black Wii has helped boost sales at all.
Its bundle packages are looking pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean you get the Black Wii.
Because you get the Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, and you get a Motion Plus for $200. So,
Yep, and it's black. You get a black controller. It's a pretty good deal. So I'm wondering if that may have given it a little bit of a boost. And then the DS, I don't even know why you talk about the DS anymore. It's just a runaway train at this point.
Do you want to guess first month of 3DS sales?
As many as they can make.
Yeah.
Period. Whatever they say they're launching with, that's how many they'll sell. That's bottom. Even if
Did they ever actually announce how many they're shipping though?
no
For hardware
they
numbers,
haven't even said
never
when
do
they're
that.
shipping
Yeah.
it yet. But I guarantee whatever number
It's like
Nintendo
11.
announces that they're going to have, I don't care if it's 2 million at launch. I don't care if it's 3 million at launch. I think they'll sell them all. I mean, that machine makes that big of an impression. I think, again, the challenge for Nintendo is getting it in people's hands. But they have experience with that with the Wii. You know, they kind of had to do that with the Wii as well, make sure people played it. And they were really good at that and successful at that. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do that with the 3DS as well. Any other notes you guys have picked up on from the MPD this month?
No, other than things just being low in general. I mean, Japan was pretty low last week too. I think Wii Party came out like 250,000 on
Yeah.
top, and then everything below that was like tiny, like 80,000.
Yeah, about the only thing that's up is hardware, thanks to the 360 Slim, I'm sure, and video game accessories. But both games and software.
And I bet you July will be even more depressing because Crackdown's a kind of big game, but StarCraft's the big game this month, and that's PC. That's not going to be factored
They won't even show
into-
up on here.
Yeah, it's not going to be factored in at all.
Well, actually, do they factor in PC sales into the overall video game number?
No, I
and we
think
just don't
video
know
games
it?
completely separate than
Are you
from
sure?
PC.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure.
So what? Like PC games get factored into like the
Nothing.
same productivity
What are they
software?
factored into?
I think they have their own PC line.
Yeah,
I mean, they
they-
used to do weekly for PC. I don't know if they still do, but they used to do weekly with numbers for PC. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, overall, the industry down 6%, which is a little concerning looking at the immediate horizon with not a lot of big AAA games coming. So, we got to pick it up by the bootstraps.
I wonder how much this stuff will change if they were to more reliably track stuff that people buy online through the various networks.
You mean through digital distribution?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, full games I don't think are still getting a whole lot of love in that area. But it would be interesting if they started rolling in some of the DLC game. I mean, we've heard some reports from the Deadliest Warrior game, and I can't publicly announce what they are, but it did some pretty freaking awesome sales. I'll say that much in a short period of time. All right, next we're going to talk about what I think is one of the coolest looking DLC games in recent memory. I'm sure other people would disagree with that because of its monochrome nature.
It's also not 3 dimensions.
Oh. It's called Limbo. I'm sure you guys have probably seen footage of it at this point. So the whole game's kind of a silhouette, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
Yes, works
Different
for me, or
degrees
shadows.
of silhouette and
Yeah.
shadows. Ryan, you played the game for review. Now, the first thing is there's sort of dissenting opinions on how long this game is. Now, you say it took you 3 hours,
I
right?
went home. I downloaded the game. I started it at 9. I finished it around a little after midnight. I got really stuck on one area for a good 20 minutes. Just banged my head on the wall until I got through it. Got a little bit stuck at a couple other places. So I said, the game's around 3 hours. Maybe I should have padded that to 4. But
Why would you fudge the amount
well,
of
we
time it took you to
round
beat-
up.
Yeah.
But
Were you playing it in a wormhole and shit?
it was a Tesseract actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sat down. I think just played it all the way through. I think I maybe got up to P once, but I don't think people need to know that.
Yeah.
And
Now, some people are saying it's like 8 hours long.
yeah, and I guess if you get really stuck, you could really take more time. I really would.
That's
I don't
like
know.
more
I
than
would.
double
I
the
would.
length.
I would say. I mean, you played the game a little, Shane.
Yeah.
I know a lot of you saw it at GDC, Miguel. I
Yeah.
mean, the game is very linear. You're always heading forward.
Yeah.
So even when you do get stuck, there's only so many objects that you can interact with. Once in a while, maybe you don't notice if there's something you can exactly interact with. And then the vocabulary of your controls is really small too. You can
Oh,
jump
yeah,
on
it's like
things.
2 buttons.
You can grab things. You can push, pull, and switch things.
Yeah.
But what about distractions in terms of collectibles or just hidden things in the levels? Would that take up any more time?
There's 7 or 8 achievements, all for hidden things.
Yeah.
And they're very well hidden, and that can take you a little bit of time to go find them. But again, it's not like the game branches out very much more than a couple steps. I mean, you probably never get to an area that's what I'd call bigger than maybe four screens, if that makes sense to people, that you'd be interacting with. It's really, really fun. I mean, I enjoyed every second that I was playing with it. But I mean, if you have to, you can't ignore how much a game costs. And
Right.
this game's $15, and it just felt a little expensive. And it is it's amazing. It's beautiful. It has really good puzzles, but it's also very, very traditional. It wasn't something like Braid where you where that game did take me multiple play sessions, and I had to sleep on it to get some of the puzzle pieces. But that's something that also really I hadn't really experienced. I mean, you could maybe say Sands of Time a little bit, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. This is very much a
It's the presentation that's unique. It's not the game design or the gameplay.
well, the gameplay's it's not unique, but it's devious in a good way. I mean, I guess you could say that the constant death as your teacher is maybe something, but that's a really old school idea that's just being brought back. And death not being that punishing is nice, but Yeah, there's nothing really other than other than the look. There's nothing out and out like unique about the game. It's a great experience. It's just a pity that it's so expensive. I mean, I personally would purchase it regardless, but I'm crazy, so I don't know about like other people.
And apparently really good at games.
No, just this one, I guess. The game was made in Europe, and my mother's European, so maybe that had something to do with it.
I'm just wondering what the huge disparity in time, where it would come in.
If you got stuck a lot, I guess I could start adding up to hours, but really 7 or 8 hours seems
for me, if
really
I get
high.
that stuck, like, I've learned to walk away from the game because you just fall into this mental loop where you keep trying the same things over and over, assuming that the next time you try it, something different is going to happen.
Unless you have to play the game, in which case you're just tearing your hair out.
I'm in that situation all the time, but I still find myself at least taking 10 minutes away from the game and coming back, and you'll be amazed how quickly, if you get your mind off of it, how differently you look at it when you come back to it. So that's what I do. I try not to smash my head against the wall trying to figure something out.
I like to go to bed thinking about the problem, and then when I wake up, my pillow's missing. I think I got 2 stories confused there.
All right, here we go into our marathon session of On the Hook. Ryan is going to go over the first one.
Where do you guys stand on the video games and art debate? I have to say that if movies can be called art, then why can't video games? It says video game. And this is from Spike.
What's up, Spike?
Well, I mean, just the game we were just talking about, Limbo, it's super artistic. I guess the bigger question is, what is art? And that's a can of worms, but
or a wormhole.
I mean, yes, let's go with that theme. I mean, it comes back to the question. I mean, do you consider a great work of literature to be art? Do you consider a lowbrow art to be art?
I think
it's kind of a stupid question almost.
I think the best way to address this is like take one starting point and then go from there. Like one interpretation of art is something that allows you to make sense of the world or view the world through a different lens. Do games do that? Sometimes, I guess.
Well, role-playing games.
I think my definition of art is something that isn't necessary, but it makes it feel necessary.
That's deep.
Does that make any sense?
No,
well, I mean, I think something that communicates and evokes, an
emotion.
Yeah, and I mean, and you see, like with a lot of just, abstract painting and stuff like that. I mean, it's really, it's interpretive. It's about motion and color, and and you can't identify like what is that. I mean, everyone has a different interpretation a lot of times.
What emotions do games make you feel? Like frustration?
All of them, really. Games make me feel probably more emotions than most paintings do, in all honesty. I mean, especially a lot of the classic paintings that, were just paintings of people. Abstract art, to me, I think evokes more emotion than realistic art, at least personally. But I get the whole spectrum from games. I wish I got more sadness maybe from games and that sort of emotional attachment. It doesn't seem like games go that deep a lot of times, but when they do, it's awesome. I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but one of my favorite moments ever from video games was in Ocarina of Time when Link comes back to the village and it's on fire. And the look on his face, and just you start thinking about, what if I came back to my home and my home was on fire, my family was in there, and my loved ones were in there. So that was one of those moments in games, and that was with the N64. It really had nothing to do with technology. It was all about setting up the love of his village with you, introducing you to the characters in that village so you cared about them, so that whenever something horrible happened to them and you came back, it really struck a chord. And that bothers me more than all these HD games that I've seen where, their wife dies or they're going back for vengeance. It was just something about that moment in that game that just struck me really hard at the time, and like I still feel it all these years later.
Right.
So.
Yeah, there's the impact of interactivity is different. You look at just stuff like simply going around and talking to NPCs in an adventure or an RPG, and like really if you wrote those things out in a book, it would not be that interesting. But because you've gone there and you feel like you've met this person, like you have more of an attachment to them. And same thing with your characters and your party and all of that. You've spent a lot of time with these people, and so you get that attachment there. And I think it's bizarre that there's even a debate that like, okay, here we have something where you have music and you have artwork and you have animation, you have storytelling. You put them all together and you get something that's not art.
Well, I think one of the things
you have like 20 artists working on something,
but I think
not art.
I think that's the point with a lot of the people in the not art crowd is that there's a great essay by Walter Benjamin called "The Age of Art in Mechanical Reproduction," where when photographs first came out, people were like, I can reproduce these. How can this be art? Because it's reproduced. And then it kind of went to something where you look at like Andy Warhol, where he had like, the factory system, where it was almost like art factories. And then you have artists today that are literally, there's artists that don't touch their artwork. They hire people to do everything. They're just conceptualized. And I think it's kind of funny to look at video games where you can't really point at like when, you hear about an art film and they put like the praise onto the director or the auteur. There's there's some game designers that have their name out there, but usually it's kind of this kind of corporate thing that kind of gets put out. So it's kind of like this
it's
kind
part
of
a
corporate.
Brand.
It's kind of a corporate art, and that's where I also see the indie game stuff's kind of coming up again because you're seeing these like 2 people, 1 person, whatever, small teams kind of getting up there, and it's just kind of the separation of the aura of the artist, which definitely can affect the artwork versus just here's something that's aesthetically pleasing and interactive. And if you go to any like museum, all the like interactive installations are pretty much video games. I mean, they're microcontrollers and interactive video and moving parts, that you interact with.
Well, I think what spurred on this debate, right, is Roger Ebert saying that games aren't art. He got slammed. I mean, I don't think he realized how passionate, our users are and the people who play games are. And I think it caught him off guard, and he actually had to go back and like readdress everything because people had sent him really poignant emails that kind of made him think, maybe I'm an idiot. And I think that's sort of what started this whole debate. I haven't really talked to a lot of people that are within our age range or have kind of grown up with this medium who would say video games aren't art. It's usually the 50, the 60, the 70-year-old people who didn't grow up with games. A lot of those people have made a conscious decision to never even eat. Roger Ebert says he's never played a video game, which I think is a little irresponsible of him to make a statement like that, having never touched the medium. How do you know until you've tried it? What's different about movies that makes movies art that makes video games not art?
I think a lot of it comes down to like a formal question. The big one is, does the fact that the author, in this case being the people who make the game, the author basically relinquishes authority of their story to the players. They could set up all of these scenarios like the one you described in Zelda. They could set it up and basically hope that you're going to react to it a certain way. But once they put you in their world, it all goes out the window, Mm-hmm. You could get to that sequence and start running around and like, throwing rocks at the villagers and
breaking the game sort of thing.
Essentially, yeah. So
it's giving control.
That's when you get into things that, people say something's a readerly work or a writerly work, where like, once the author is, this is like all very kind of heady stuff, but these are things people debate about all the time. But I think that even cements it more that like this is an art form, It's beyond craft.
Yeah, I think
it's gone beyond the realm of craft.
It's like what Bloodworth said. To me, the most obvious answer is you have musicians and artists working in groups of dozens on this product, yet what they're working on isn't art, but they're artists. So how do scores of artists work together on something that ultimately does not become art?
Well, scores of artists also work on like Geico commercials,
But I think even in the advertising medium, I think there is some art in the advertising medium. I don't think all commercials have no sort of artistic value to them. I think there are some commercials that certainly do. So I think, you can't say all paintings are art. I don't think you can say all movies are art. I don't think you can say all video games are art. Is Tetris art? Probably not.
It's like all dogs are mammals, but not all mammals are dogs.
Right. Yeah, I think the answer is certainly, they can be. And
they can be, right.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best answer, just like there are some movies that I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't consider art as well. So it's an interesting question, but I think a lot of that will sort of fade over time as these older generations start to sadly die and sort of move on to whatever's next. And the people who have grown up with this medium and embraced it and accepted it sort of take over the common lexicon of what art is or what it isn't.
What the heck's going on?
Issa's code is inscribed within the child of Issa. You have chosen Imaginal's Law.
Imaginal's Law? What nonsense is this?
Question number 2, Miguel Lopez.
Why don't game company charge the retailer who sells the used
Don't
game?
read it how they wrote it, dude. Read it right.
Why don't game companies charge the retailer who sells the used games instead of the gamer who usually only ends up paying $5 less for a used version? So basically, why are the publishers from Brownies? So basically, the question is, why don't the game publishers screw the retailers as opposed to us? And I think the answer is because this system is set up to make you miserable. That's why.
Well, I mean, it comes down to enforcement, right? I mean, how do they make them pay for that? There's no way. They don't get them from the publisher.
There'd have to be some like FTC heavy lobbying, right, to make some sort of rule for this sort of thing. Like it's like when Blockbuster started renting Nintendo games. It like went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, you're okay to rent Nintendo games, but you can't make photocopies of the manuals. Like, who knows how you're going to interpret the law? Yeah. But I think you'd have to have someone actually implement something and get it through Congress for any sort of like something like that. I know David Jaffe wants what are those things? He wants royalties paid to people that buy used games.
Well, they're already starting to do it a little bit. When you buy a used
happen.
game, and if you want to get online with some of the sports titles that EA is doing, you have to pay for that $10
But that's what they're
code
saying.
or something. That's what they're
the
doing.
gamer has to pay for that, not the retailer.
Not the retailer. I was looking at the in-store.
Saying things much less eloquently, the retailers have the publishers by the balls. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If they can't sort of strong arm the retailers. Like, the retailers kind of set the prices and are like, look, we're not getting a big profit margin off your games. So they go to them and say, hey, well, let's charge an extra $10 so we're making more, and we're trying to sort of get some of that, recoup some of that used sale money. Then the retailers will just jack up the price. So the publishers are actually in a lose-lose situation here. There's nothing they can do. That's why they're pushing so hard for digital distribution, because they want to cut that guy out.
It's going to be digital distribution in the future, and then your web browser will send your cookie information, and that's how the price will be decided for how you pay for video games.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, Project $10 was really the only recourse the publishers had.
Well, what I think is interesting is that still, when they have those games put out on digital distribution, they don't drop the price at all. You'd think you'd want to incentivize people to go towards that product rather than go to a store.
No, you're absolutely right.
But it's still a balancing. You can't piss off the brick and mortar stores too much.
You start undercutting the brick and mortar stores.
It's a calculus problem, you know?
And it's tough.
And that's why we don't do business.
Exactly. That's why we're video game journalists. But I think that's really the issue right now, is that the retailers are holding all the cards in the poker game, and the publishers, it's a very delicate situation. I think they feel like this online $10 charge thing is the only way they can kind of work around the retailers without the retailers getting too pissed off. Although I'm sure they're not happy about it, because the used sales, for their games, it's going to affect it ultimately. It's going to affect the value of the used games that they sell. Obviously a game isn't of equal value now if you don't have the option to play online with it. So it's a delicate situation. I don't really see anything changing in the foreseeable future until digital distribution becomes more of a reality and a possibility, honestly. Like, I'd still rather drive a block and a half to Best Buy to buy a game than sit overnight and wait to download a full-length game, especially at the full price. As you mentioned, you've got to provide some kind of incentive for people to download it. Otherwise, they're just going to swing by a store and buy it. So
some kind of interference.
Gordon, stay put. We'll get you out of there.
Something is drawing him away.
What's the meaning of this? Who are you? How did you get in here?
Question number 3, Daniel Bloodworth.
Remakes / reimaginings of games such as GoldenEye and Castlevania are trying to capture the nostalgia of previous versions, which in my opinion they never reach. I believe it's impossible, but I want your opinion. And that's from Steven.
Steven.
Steven. I hear that all the time.
Steven.
Is that your brother?
Yeah.
Yeah, GoldenEye to me, and it's like the second time somebody's done it. EA kind of did it with the DS GoldenEye. It's kind of deceptive. Like, it's not really a remake of, well, not like a re-release of GoldenEye. It's sort of like a reimagining of it altogether.
Yeah, I think I see with a lot of things that nostalgia definitely clouds your judgment. There's a lot of games that I hold in really high regard, and you go back and play them, and you're like, yeah, this ain't as good as I remember it. And, I think nostalgia can cloud people's memories, but I don't think people are stupid. Like, I think Steven is right on the money here. Like, he's not fooled by the new GoldenEye. Like, he gets it. He's like, I've moved on from GoldenEye. Now I'm playing Modern Warfare, or I'm playing Killzone, or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm playing Gears of War, or a third-person shooter with a cover system. It's kind of archaic. It was like when I went back and played Perfect Dark on Xbox Live. Like, I literally played like the first hour or two of it, and I was like, I'm over this. Like, the controls were very simple. I felt like the ability to really maneuver through the environment and make sure myself is covered was wasn't what I'm used to. It felt like a dinosaur to me. Even though I had huge nostalgia for Perfect Dark, I was a huge fan of it back in the day it was released. But even though they had upped the visuals and upped the poly count and redone the textures, it just wasn't enough for me. Like, it felt slow, it felt deliberate. There was a lot about it. It just seemed old. And I think they're gonna have to do a lot of work to GoldenEye to keep the same thing from happening. In all honesty.
Well, for me, Punch-Out is a good example because I still like the original Punch-Out and I still play the original Punch-Out. And then the new one came out and I got into it and stuff, but it didn't bring the nostalgia factor for me as strong as I thought it was going to be. And I still go back and play the other one.
Well, I think what I realized with that game was, wow, that game was really freaking simple.
Yeah, that's one thing about it.
What about cases where games actually do justice to, their predecessors, like Metroid? Like when Metroid Prime came out, everybody was ready to.
But that was a brand new game. I mean, that wasn't like a remake or a reimagining.
It's not a reimagining. I mean, I don't know what he's really saying there, but
yeah.
Here's the question: like, how would something capture nostalgia? I mean, basically what I think he's really asking is, like, doesn't this kind of suck? But I want to actually look at the words he's using. Like, how would something capture the nostalgia from these bygone eras?
Yeah, I mean, when you see something like Metroid Prime or Ocarina, I mean, those definitely did a great job of capturing the nostalgia, but still making it feel like a new experience.
Right. It's like, can this shit hold a candle to what the old games were? Yeah, I think they can, but they probably don't. Like, it's kind of sad to me that the industry is so risk averse that they keep dredging up all this old stuff as opposed to just being honest about what they're doing and making a new game without putting like an old label. Like the Castlevania, that could be like any medieval dude just going around killing.
It was, and at one point it was.
Right.
What was it called?
Like, well, I mean,
they put a Castlevania on this.
The go ahead. It was like a competition between teams all over the world to see who was going to make the next Castlevania game. So they didn't put the actual Castlevania name on it at first. But yeah, that game has a lot to prove to me still. I really want it to be good. I want it to do all of this stuff.
And can I just say, Konami's been like sucking balls lately on this. Yeah. Like those Rebirth games, they're not dreadful, but they're not really that good. I picked up Castlevania Rebirth and I was just like, And I was actually looking at the Russian Attack game they're making. I was actually looking at that today because I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of like Shadow Complex or something. I'm glad Rich is in here. Russian Attack was never a good game. Any game where you have to press up to jump is not a good game.
Right, I'd agree.
But
100%.
What are we talking about Russians in 2010?
But I was watching the footage and it just looks bad. The Rocket Knight game they just put out was pretty much a travesty. You can ride the nostalgia train a little bit, but I mean, don't overdo it.
I think what does it for me more than anything is music and atmosphere. What was the atmosphere of that original game? What was the music like of that original game? I think Metroid Prime's a perfect example of that. Right. You get the whole feeling of isolation in the 3D version that you got in the 2D version. The music was there. It was redone. It sounded even better. Super Mario 64, the first Mario game to go into 3D. They did a great job of recreating the atmosphere of a 2D Mario game. So to me, even more than what the character looks like on screen or the art style that they're using, for me personally, it's the atmosphere. Can they recreate how I felt when I was sitting there when I was 8 years old playing this game? And music goes a long way for me personally in doing that.
Yeah.
All right, and the last question I'm going to answer, and it comes from our good friend Vargan, and his question is, what is it?
What is what?
I've had this question before.
I think what he meant to ask is what it is.
What is it? That's not a question.
What it is.
That's what Patrick Morales says sometimes, though. Yeah. What it is.
He's a gangster.
He's also into fighting games.
Ryan.
Yes.
What is it?
It's about this big, and it's about this color. And I would say it kind of does this sort of motion. Does that make sense?
And it kind of smells like that.
Yeah. I think we kind of covered it.
Yeah, Vargan, that's what it is.
Okay.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 117 as we head off to San Diego for Comic-Con 2010. definitely be sure to check out our coverage. By now you've seen a good bit of it, but it will continue over the weekend. Also, as a special note, you might want to head on over to Spike.com, who will be handling all the movies, comics, stuff like that from the show. They definitely have some really good coverage going on there as well. Thank you so much for sending in your questions. Keep them coming. I don't know if we'll do another full-on on the hook episode in the near future, but we would like to make it a regular part of the show. So submit your questions at invisiblewalls.gametrailers.com. Again, props for the great ones you guys gave us this week. I think it actually inspired some of the best discussion we've had in a while. So thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thanks for checking out our Comic-Con coverage. Invisible Walls is up and out.